Good day, Africa, and welcome to another edition of AAU Talks. And today's edition or episode is a special one dedicated to the life of the former UN Secretary General who passed on the 18th of August 2018. And for us as the higher education body, we are also paying tribute to the legend of Africa and the son of the African continent. And so we'll be going through his life. We'll be looking at some of his legacies and the very things and the very words that he spoke, both at the continental level and then the global level as well. My name is Kwesi Sam, and I will be doing this with my colleague. Adwa?
My name is Irene Dufay, and I'll be the co-host on the life of Dr. Kofi Annan.
All right, so we'll go for a quick break where we want to look at a short video of Busumuru Dr. Kofi Annan. Stay tuned, and this is AAU Talks.
I, Kofi Annan, solemnly swear to exercise in all loyalty, discretion and conscience, the functions entrusted to me as Secretary General of the United Nations. Congratulations, sir.
And that was the swearing in of the former UN Secretary General at the time that he was taking or assuming office as the UN Secretary General. We'll go straight to look at his life and then a bit of the things that he did on earth while he was still alive. And so Dr. Kofi Annan, who is popularly known as Busumuru Kofi Annan, was a Ghanaian diplomat who served as the 7th Secretary General of the United Nations from January 1997 to December 2006. He and the UN were the co-recipient of the 2001 Nobel Peace Prize. He was the founder and chairman of the Kofi Annan Foundation, as well as chairman of the Elders, an international organization founded by Nelson Mandela. Kofi Annan joined the UN in 1962, working on the World Health Organization's Geneva office. He went on to work in several capacities at the UN headquarters, including serving as the Under Secretary General for Peacekeeping between March 1992 and December 1996. He was appointed as the Secretary General on 13 December 1996 by the Security Council and later confirmed by the General Assembly, making him the first office holder to be elected from the UN staff itself. He was re-elected for a second term in 2001 and was succeeded as Secretary General by Ban Ki-moon on January 1, 2007.
As the Secretary General, Annan reformed the UN bureaucracy, worked to combat HIV, especially in Africa, and launched the UN Global Compact. He was criticized for not expanding the Security Council and faced calls for resignation after an investigation into the Oil for Food program. After leaving the UN, he founded the Kofi Annan Foundation in 2007 to work on international development. In 2012, Kofi Annan was the UN Arab League Joint Special Representative for Syria to help find a resolution to the ongoing conflict there. He quit after becoming frustrated with the UN lack of progress with regard to the conflict resolution. In September 2016, he was appointed to lead a UN commission to investigate the Rohingya crisis. In August 2018, Annan died in Switzerland after a short illness. Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, said Kofi Annan was champion for peace and a guiding force for good.
All right, so we want to look at the birth, education, and family life of Dr. Kofi Annan. And so Busumuru Dr. Kofi Annan was born in Kumasi in Ghana on 8 April 1938. His father was Henry Reginald Annan and his mother was Victoria Annan. He was a twin, hence his middle name Atta, which in his native Akan tribe means twin. In the Akan names tradition, children are named according to the day of the week on which they were born, and Kofi in Akan is the name that corresponds with Friday. Thus, Kofi Annan was born on a Friday. His twin sister Ifwa Atta died in 1991. Kofi Annan was a Christian and fellowshipped with the Methodist Church. From 1954 to 1957, Kofi Atta Annan attended the Elite Infantry School, a Methodist boarding school in Cape Coast in Ghana. He graduated in 1957, the year the Gold Coast gained independence from Britain to become the modern-day Ghana. In 1958, Kofi Annan began studying economics at the Kumasi College of Science and Technology in Ghana, now the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He received a Ford Foundation grant, enabling him to complete his undergraduate studies in economics at McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota, United States in 1961. He then completed a diplôme d'études approfondies DEA degrees in international relations at the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies in Geneva, Switzerland from 1961 to 1962. After some years of work experience, he studied at the MIT Sloan School of Management in 1971 to 1972 in the Sloan's Fellowship Program and earned a master's degree in management.
More about his family life. In 1965, Kofi Annan married Titi Alakija, a Nigerian woman, and several years later, they had a daughter, Ama, and later a son, Kojo. The couple separated in late 1970s and divorced in 1983. In 1984, Annan married Nan Maria Lagajen, a Swedish lawyer at the UN. He has a daughter, Nina, from a previous marriage. More on his work life. In 1962, Kofi Annan started working as a budget officer for the World Health Organization, an agency of the United Nations from 1974 to 1976. He worked as the director of tourism in Ghana. In 1980, he became the head of personnel for the Office of the UN High Commission for Refugees in Geneva. In 1983, he became the Director of Administrative Management Services of the UN Secretariat in New York. In the late 1980s, Kofi Annan was appointed as an Assistant Secretary General of the UN in 3 consecutive positions: Human Resources, Management and Security Coordinator, Program Planning, Budget and Finance, and Controller from 1990 to 1992. When then Secretary General Boutros Ghali established the Department of Peacekeeping Operations in 1992, Kofi Annan was appointed to the new department as Deputy to the Under-Secretary General Marek Gordon, and subsequently succeeded Gordon and assumed the office of Under-Secretary General. In March 1993, he was thus Under Secretary General for Peacekeeping at a time when nearly 70,000 military and civilian personnel were deployed in UN operations around the world and during the Battle of Somalia and resulting collapse of UNISOM II peacekeeping mission and the Rwanda genocide of 1994.
On 29 August 1995, while UN Secretary General Boutros Ghali was unreachable on an airplane, Kofi Annan instructed United Nations officials to relinquish for a limited period of time their authority to veto airstrikes in Bosnia. This move allowed NATO forces to conduct Operation Deliberate Force and made him a favorite of the United States. According to Richard Holbrook, Annan's ghastly performance convinced the United States that he would be a good replacement for Boutros Ghali. Kofi Annan served as Under-Secretary General of the UN from March 1994 to October 1995. He was appointed a special representative of the Secretary General to the former Yugoslavia, serving for 5 months before returning to his duties as Under-Secretary General in April 1996. Now we look at some of his appointment, and basically his appointment as the Secretary General of the United Nations from 1997 to 2006.
And in 1996, UN Secretary General Boutros Ghali from Egypt ran unopposed for a second term. But although he won 14 of the 15 votes on the Security Council, he was vetoed by the United States. After 4 deadlock meetings of the Security Council, Boutros Ghali suspended his candidacy, becoming the only Secretary General ever to be denied a second term. Kofi Annan was the leading candidate to replace him by beating Amara Esse by 1 vote in the first round. However, France vetoed Annan 4 times before finally abstaining. The UN Secretary Council subsequently recommended Annan on 13 December 1996, confirmed 4 days later by the vote of the General Assembly. Kofi Annan started his first term as the Secretary General on 1st January 1997.
In 2001, the Asia Pacific Group agreed to support Annan for a second term in return for the African Group's support for an Asian Secretary General in 2006 selection. The Security Council recommended Annan for a second term on 27 June 2001, and the General Assembly approved his reappointment on 29 June 2001. We'll go for a break, and we will be looking at some of the legacies that Dr. Kofi Annan left on earth.
To all of us. I'm working to create a world that is stable, that is peaceful, where we as human beings realize that we cannot consume the resources of the world the way we are doing, as if there is no tomorrow. It's going to be a disaster for our children and our grandchildren. The farmer knows instinctively that if you take something from the earth today, you have to put something back to be able to return to harvest tomorrow. Somehow, when we move to the city, we lose that instinct. We need to create a world that is equitable, that is stable, and a world where we bear in mind the needs of others and not only what we need immediately. We are all in the same boat. Let's say in a cruise, boat sometimes seems too small. Let's say we are all in a cruise. Some may be in the best suites in the boat, others may be in a little dinghy hole somewhere. But if the ship begins to take water, whatever end of the boat you are, whatever your accommodation, we are all at risk. We should reach out and work in partnership with civil society, with the private sector, with foundations, for philanthropists, focusing on the need of the individual. Yes, states are important and their concerns are important, but at the end of the day, it is the citizens and the individual needs which are important. Huge problems like genocide begins with one individual, the humiliation of one individual. And so the focus on individuals and people is the right one. And if we work in partnership and we all do our little bit collectively, we will make a giant contribution.
continue with the global initiatives under Kofi Annan's leadership, the United Nations Global Compact, and an address to the World Economic Forum on the 31st January 1999, Secretary General Kofi Annan urged that the goals of the United Nations and those of business can indeed be mutually supportive, and proposed that the private sector and the United Nations initiate a global compact of shared values and principles, which will give a human face to the global market. On 26 July 2000, the UN Global Compact was officially launched at the UN headquarters in New York. It is a principle-based framework for businesses which aim to catalyze action in support of broader UN goals, such as the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs. The compact established 10 core principles in the areas of human rights, labor and environment, and anti-corruption. And under compact, companies commit to the 10 principles and are brought together with UN agencies, labor groups, and civil society to effectively implement them.
Now, under Millennium Development Goals in 2000, ahead of the Millennium Summit, Kofi Annan issued a report entitled, "We the People, the Role of the United Nations in the 21st Century." The report called for member states to put people at the center of everything we do. No calling is more noble and no responsibility greater than that of enabling men, women, and children in cities and villages around the world to make their lives better. In a final chapter of the report, Kofi Annan drew on the findings of earlier work by the UN, the World Bank, the IMF, and the OECD, and identified priority areas which the UN should focus in order to free our fellow men and women from abject and dehumanizing poverty, in which more than 1 billion of them are currently confined. These served as the basis for the subsequent Millennium Development Goals, which were developed with additional input from the Millennium Forum, a group comprised 1,000 non-governmental and civil society organizations from more than 100 countries. At the end of the Millennium Summit, delegates adopted the Millennium Declaration, in which they committed to a new global partnership to reduce extreme poverty and set out a series of time-bound targets, which subsequently became known as the Millennium Development Goals.
United Nations Information Technology Service. Within the We the People's document, Kofi Annan suggested the establishment of a United Nations Information Technology Service, a consortium of high-tech volunteer corps, including NetCore Canada and NetCore America, which United Nations volunteers would coordinate. This was established. Towards the end of the 90s, increased awareness of the destructive potential of epidemics such as HIV/AIDS pushed public health issues to the top of the global development agenda. In April 2001, Kofi Annan issued a 5-point call to action to address the HIV/AIDS pandemic, stating that as a personal priority, Secretary General Annan proposed the establishment of a global AIDS and health fund dedicated to the battle against HIV/AIDS and other infectious diseases. In June of that year, the General Assembly of the United Nations committed to the creation of such a fund during a special session on AIDS, and the permanent secretary of the Global Fund was subsequently established in June 2002.
Now we take other diplomatic activities which were being assigned on by the Secretary General, former Secretary General, Busumuru Dr. Kofi Annan. And in 1998, Kofi Annan was deeply involved in supporting the transition from military to civilian rule in Nigeria. The following year, he supported the effort of East Timor to secure independence from Indonesia. In 2000, he was responsible for certifying Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon. And in 2006, he led talks in New York between the president of Cameroon and Nigeria, which led to a settlement of the dispute between the two countries over the Bakassi Peninsula. Kofi Annan and Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad disagreed sharply on Iran's nuclear program, and on Iranian exhibition of cartoons mocking the Holocaust, and on the then upcoming international conference to review the global vision of the Holocaust, an Iranian Holocaust denial conference in 2006. During a visit to Iran instigated by continued Iranian uranium enrichment, Kofi Annan said, "I look the tragedy of a Holocaust as an undeniable historical fact, and we should really accept that fact and teach people what happened in World War II and ensure it is never repeated." Kofi Annan supported sending a UN peacekeeping mission to Darfur, Sudan. He worked with the government of Sudan to accept a transfer of power from the African Union peacekeeping mission to a UN one. He also worked with several Arab and Muslim countries on women's rights and other topics.
The next is on his farewell from the UN system. And on 19 September 2006, Annan gave a farewell address to the world leaders gathered at the UN headquarters in anticipation of his retirement. On 31st December, in the speech, he outlined 3 major problems of an unjust world economy, world disorder, and widespread contempt for human rights and the rule of law, which he believes have not resolved but sharpened during his time as Secretary General. He also pointed to violence in Africa and the Arab-Israeli conflict as 2 major issues warranting attention. On 11 December 2006, in his final speech as the Secretary General delivered in Missouri, Kofi Annan recalled Truman's leadership in the founding of the United Nations. He called for the United States to return to precedent, Truman's multilateralist foreign policy, and to follow Truman's credo that the responsibility of the great state is to serve and not dominate the peoples of the world.
Now we take a look at post-United Nations international career of Busumuru Dr. Kofi Annan. And so after his service as UN Secretary General, Annan took up residence in Geneva and worked in a leading capacity on various international humanitarian endeavors. The first is the Kofi Annan Foundation, and Kofi Annan's contribution to peace worldwide is delivered through mediation, political mentoring, advocacy, and advice. In 2007, he established the Kofi Annan Foundation, an independent, not-for-profit organization that works to promote better global governance and strengthen the capacity of people and countries to achieve a fairer, more peaceful world. The foundation believes that fair and peaceful societies rest on 3 pillars: peace and security, sustainable development, and human rights, and the rule of law. And they have made it their mission to mobilize the leadership and the political resolve needed to tackle threats to these 3 pillars. The foundation provides the analytical and logistical support to facilitate this in cooperation with relevant local, regional, and international actors. Kofi Annan provided informal counsel and participated in discreet diplomatic initiatives to avert and resolve crises by applying his unique experience and inspirational leadership. He was often asked to intercede in crisis, sometimes as an impartial, independent mediator, sometimes as a special envoy of the international community. In recent years, he had provided such counsel to Burkina Faso, Kenya, Myanmar, Senegal, Syria, Iraq, and Colombia.
Kenya National Dialogue and Reconciliation Process. Following the outbreak of violence during the 2007 Kenyan elections in Kenya, the African Union established a panel of eminent African personalities to assist in finding a peaceful solution to the crisis. The panel, headed by Kofi Annan, managed to convince the 2 principal parties to the conflict, President Mwai Kibaki Party of the National Unity and Raila Odinga's Orange Democratic Movement, to participate in the Kenyan National Dialogue and Reconciliation process. Over the course of 41 days of negotiation, several agreements regarding taking actions to stop the violence and remedying its consequences were signed. On 28 February, President Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga signed a coalition government agreement. Kofi Annan was widely lauded by many Kenyans for this landmark achievement.
Now we take a look at his joint special envoy for Syria. And on 23 February 2012, Annan was appointed as the UN Arab League envoy to Syria in an attempt to end the civil war taking place. But on 2nd August, he resigned as UN and Arab League joint special envoy to Syria, citing the intransigence of both the Assad government and the rebels, as well as the stalemate of the Security Council as preventing any peaceful resolution of the situation. He also stated that the lack of international unity and ineffective diplomacy among the world leaders has made the peaceful resolution in Syria an impossible task.
Also on Global Commission on Elections, Democracy and Security, Kofi Annan served as the chair of the Global Commission on Elections, Democracy and Security, launched in May 2011 as a joint initiative of the Kofi Annan Foundation and the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance. It comprised 12 eminent individuals from around the world, including Ernesto Zedillo, Marty Atisari, Madeleine Albright, and Amataya Sen, and aimed to highlight the importance of the integrity of elections to achieving a more secure, prosperous, and stable world.
Now we take a look at his special awards and honors. Kofi Annan is the recipient of an uncountable number of awards. A few have been highlighted as follows: Nobel Peace Prize, and in 2001, its centennial year, the Nobel Committee decided that the Peace Prize was to be divided between the UN and Kofi Annan. He was awarded the Peace Prize for having revitalized the UN and for having given priority to human rights. The Nobel Committee also recognized his commitment to the struggle in containing the spread of HIV in Africa and his declared opposition to international terrorism.
Conferment of Busumuru title from the Asante Kingdom of Ghana. The Asante King of Ghana, Otumfo Osei Tutu, conferred the rare title of Busumuru, or Son of the Golden Stool, on Kofi Annan at a traditional gathering of tribal leaders in Ghana's second largest city, Kumasi, on Friday, 16th August 2002. Busumuru is the name of the golden sword used by the king to swear allegiance to the Ashanti Kingdom at his coronation. I and the entire Ashanti state have decided to add your name to the Busumuru title because of your selfless and contributions to humanity and promotion of peace throughout the world, the king said as he placed a symbolic gold necklace around Annan's neck to the sound of traditional drumming. Kofi Annan was and still is the only person to be granted the title since the Ashanti Kingdom was founded in 1680. Accepting the honor, Annan said, "I share this honor with all good people of the world, through whose contribution we are able to get somewhere."
The Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, honoring the country's renowned international icon, the government of Ghana, through the Ministry of Defense, established the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center in 1998 and commissioned it in 2004. The purpose was to build upon and share Ghana's 5 decades of internationally acclaimed experience and competence in peace operations, which began in the United Nations missions to the Congo in the early 1960s. The KAIPTC is mandated to train military, police, and civilian personnel for multidimensional peacekeeping and peace support operations in the Economic Community of West African States ECOWAS region, Africa, and beyond. The center is one of the 3 peacekeeping training centers and excellence mandated by ECOWAS to offer training in peacekeeping and peace support operations in Africa. Since the first peacekeeping course in 2003, the center has attracted individuals from over 90 countries and major organizations in Europe, North and South America, Asia, and Africa for up to postgraduate academic programs in the peace and security issues.
And as higher education, we are more interested on Kofi Annan's educational legacy. Kofi Annan Business School Foundation. The Kofi Annan Business School Foundation was established in 2007 with the support of former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan. It is a joint initiative of the Public Advice International Foundation, PA International, Vlerick Leuven-Gent Management School, and Hoek School, Utrecht University of Applied Sciences. The Kofi Annan Business School Foundation has selected one business school per country to collaborate with in this initiative. The academic partners are chosen on the basis of vision, academic study program, research, and geographical location.
Now we look at Kofi Annan Fellowship Fund. The Kofi Annan Fellowship Fund provides funding for Kofi Annan Fellows to pursue degree programs at business schools in Europe. The fund provides for tuition fees, travel expenses, and living expenses. Kofi Annan Fellows are academically distinguished students from developing countries who do not have access to financial means to study in Europe. They are selected on the basis of academic excellence. There is no need to apply.
And we also talk of the Kofi Annan MBA Scholarship for developing country students. Kofi Annan Fellowship is a fellowship grant for an emerging leader from a developing country for a 2-year master's in management or a 1-year full-time MBA education at European School of Management and Technology in Berlin, Germany. Starting in 2018, fellows will receive a full tuition scholarship from ESMT, 25,000 euros for MIM students and 43,500 for MBA students, plus fair compensation for travel and accommodation costs and program-related fees.
Kofi Annan also became the Chancellor of the University of Ghana. In his home country, Ghana, Kofi Annan served as Chancellor of the University of Ghana from 2008 to 2018. He succeeded Nana Reko Ampem II and was recently succeeded by Mrs. Mary Chinnery Hayes on 1st August 2018. Paying tribute to him, former Vice-Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Professor Ernest Ayite, says the name of the former Chancellor of the school, Kofi Annan, opened major doors of opportunities for the university. His presence at the university made a big difference to what we achieved as a university. His name opened doors for us and opened doors for me. Many of the things that we were able to accomplish were mainly because of him. And these were the very words of Professor Ayite. And he noted them in a glowing tribute to the illustrious son of Africa.
And on his memoir, on 4th September 2012, Kofi Annan published his memoir, Interventions, A Life in War and Peace, written by Nada Musavizade. The book was described as a personal biography of global statecraft.
And now to his death, which is a sad one. Busumuru Kofi Annan had reportedly fallen ill while on a trip to South Africa and had been flown back to Switzerland for treatment. He died peacefully in his sleep on the morning of 18 August 2018 in Bern, Switzerland, at the age of 80. He was survived by his wife and 3 children, Ama, Kojo, and Nina, who were by his side during the last days. And these exactly are the very life of the former UN Secretary General.
I think he is a legend and
Absolutely.
He should be named as such.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then I am so much amazed, and I'm looking out for what young people may have learned from him. And what do you think his life will be as an example to the young people on the continent and even beyond?
I think he is someone we are to look up to. Looking at all his achievements we've been going through, he's a well-accomplished man. And I think it should be the bar for every youth in Africa to go through his channel, that this is what I want to do, live an impactful life where I would be remembered. I was amazed at the tributes that were coming in through every country, every organization that existed. And so he had a meaningful impact all over the world, and
All
not
right.
Africa.
So do you think there is another chance for Africa again to be on that top civil service
I don't
position?
think we are even supposed to say there is a chance. There are still Africans doing greater works,
Okay.
and we encourage more of it. And then we hope that to this, even to the highest office, a Ghanaian will still occupy that.
All right.
okay.
And so this has been AAU Talks, and we took an introspection of the life of Dr. Kofi Annan, who passed on 18th August 2018 in Switzerland after short illness. This has been AAU Talks, and thanks for watching. We'll come your way same time next week. My name is Kwesi Sam.
And my name is Irene Dufie Ade.
Thanks for watching.